My family overlooked me for years. At Thanksgiving, I casually mentioned my $160 million net worth. My sister froze, and my dad stared without speaking. I learned how to blend into the background when I was 9. That was the year my sister Sophie turned 18 and received her first car, a new BMW with a large red ribbon in our driveway. I watched from my bedroom window as she cheered, hugged our parents, and accepted congratulations from neighbors who praised them for raising such an impressive daughter. Nobody noticed me standing there in a worn sweater and thrift store pants. Sophie had always been the favored child. She was 7 years older and arrived when my parents were young, energetic, and convinced they could raise a perfect daughter. By the time I was born, I suspect I was more of an unexpected addition than part of a plan. Their enthusiasm had faded. My baby books were mostly blank. After my first birthday, they stopped updating my photo album entirely. My parents owned a modestly successful insurance firm in Connecticut. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Or at least, Sophie was. She attended Westfield Academy, a private school that cost more each year than most cars. I went to Franklin Public School, just 3 blocks away, with leaking ceiling tiles and outdated textbooks. When I asked why Sophie got to attend private school and I didn't, my mother looked at me like I had questioned something obvious. Sophie needs more stimulation, sweetheart. She's gifted. You're doing just fine where you are. Fine. That word stayed with me as a kid. Sophie was remarkable, bright, and expected to achieve great things. I was fine. For Sophie's 17th birthday, my parents took her to Paris. For mine, I spent $30 on a grocery store cake. I bought a used graphing calculator because my old one broke, and I knew better than to ask for help replacing it. In the beginning, I didn't resent the imbalance. I was too young to recognize it for what it was. I assumed that was how families operated. Some kids earned more attention because they were special. I absorbed that belief until it shaped how I saw myself. But I built something Sophie never needed to: resourcefulness. While she took French and violin lessons, I taught myself to code using library books and free online courses. While she spent summers at expensive Adirondack camps, I worked at a small grocery store and saved every dollar. While she weighed Ivy League options, I applied to state schools. I was accepted to the University of Connecticut on a full academic scholarship. My parents took me to Applebee's to celebrate. When Sophie got into Yale and they paid full tuition, they hosted a garden party for 50 people with catered food and a champagne toast. I ate 3 sliders and left early. No one noticed. College became my way out. I double majored in computer science and mathematics, held 2 part-time jobs, and spent free time improving my skills. I avoided going home for breaks. I told my parents school or work kept me busy, which was true. But the real reason was that I couldn't bear the contrast when Sophie returned to applause, while I got an offhand, "Oh, you're here too." During my junior year, everything shifted. To earn extra money, I started freelancing, building websites and apps for small businesses. One client mentioned major inventory problems that were costing them thousands due to poor supply chain tracking. Over winter break, I built a tailored solution. It was difficult, but it worked. They paid me $6,500, the most money I'd ever held at once. But the real turning point was that they referred others. Within 6 months, 10 companies reached out, requesting similar help. I switched to part-time student status and dedicated myself to creating more advanced software. I slept 4 hours a night, lived on ramen and coffee, and coded until my hands hurt. The software evolved. I named it SupplySync, and it became far more capable than I expected. A full supply chain management system that integrated with existing tools and delivered real-time data. At 21, I was running a genuine tech company from my dorm. I graduated at 22. Sophie had finished Yale a year earlier and was working at a leading marketing firm in Manhattan, living in an apartment my parents helped her buy. They were proud, constantly showing pictures of her corner office as if they had built it themselves. I remained invisible. They knew I had graduated and worked with computers, but they had no interest in the details. When I tried explaining SupplySync, my father politely nodded and redirected the conversation to Sophie's latest presentation. Eventually, I stopped trying, but one moment nearly broke my resolve to stay quiet. When I was 23, I visited for Easter, one of the few times I made the trip. Sophie was newly engaged to her first fiancé, Ethan, a lawyer my parents loved. The engagement would fall apart 8 months later when he cheated, but that day she proudly showed her ring to everyone who walked through the door. I had just signed my second major contract, worth $300,000, which meant I could hire 5 more employees. I couldn't hold in my excitement. During dinner, I said I had good news. My mom glanced at me and asked if I had met someone. No, it's work. I signed a big client. That's nice, dear, Dan said without looking up from his phone. Then he turned to Sophie and suggested hosting her engagement party in the backyard. Sophie squealed, and the conversation shifted instantly. I excused myself, went upstairs to what used to be my bedroom but was now Sophie's gift-wrapping room, and called my business partner, Olivia. The excitement I had felt disappeared as I listened to them plan a celebration for a relationship that wouldn't even last. Olivia, a talented developer I met online, had been with me from the start. They don't care, I told her, sitting among rolls of decorative paper. Then stop telling them, she replied. You don't need their approval. Build your company. Let the work speak for itself. That conversation changed everything. She was right. I had spent years trying to earn recognition from people who would always see me as Sophie's forgettable younger sister. From then on, I poured every overlooked moment and every dismissal into creating something undeniable. At 23, I landed my first major corporate contract. A regional logistics company paid $250,000 to use SupplySync across their operations. I hired my first 2 employees, skilled developers who believed in the mission. At 24, a national retailer joined, then another, and another. At 25, I had 47 employees and $7 million in revenue. At 26, a venture capital firm offered $18 million for 30% of the company. I negotiated it down to 20% for $12 million. My lawyer was stunned by my confidence, but I understood SupplySync's value. I could have told my family then. I could have shown up at Christmas, proving I was more than fine. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe memories of brushed-off birthdays and forgotten conversations. I wanted to grow it as far as possible before revealing anything. I lived simply in a small Boston apartment, drove a Honda Civic, and kept building. At 27, SupplySync went international. We signed clients in Canada, Mexico, and the UK, reaching $25 million in revenue. I moved into a nicer apartment and bought a Lexus while keeping the Honda. At 28, acquisition offers started coming from major tech companies wanting to absorb SupplySync into their systems for massive sums. I turned them down. This company was mine, and I wasn't ready to give it up. The first offer was $120 million from a Silicon Valley giant. But they planned to dismantle SupplySync and fold the technology into their platform. So I rejected it within a day. The second offer was $170 million from a European conglomerate. But they wanted to move me to Frankfurt and eliminate my entire team within a year. My board thought I had lost my mind. "These are life-changing amounts," an investor argued. "You're turning down hundreds of millions." I told them I wasn't interested in money tied to terms that undermined everything I'd built. SupplySync wasn't just code. It was people and a vision. Then there was Claire Matthews, CEO of Innovix Technologies, a founder who built her own company from scratch. She understood what SupplySync represented. We met in Boston, and she explained her plan. She didn't want to absorb SupplySync. She wanted to expand it. I would stay CEO, my team would remain, and they'd provide the resources we needed to scale globally. "You keep your vision," she said. "We help you grow it beyond anything you could do alone." After 2 hours, I knew her offer was different. Negotiations lasted 3 months. Lawyers debated every detail. I pushed hard for my team, securing retention bonuses and equity shares. When we agreed on $280 million, with every condition met, Claire smiled and told me I drove a hard bargain. I insisted on creative control, the ability to reject decisions that compromised our principles and everything else that mattered. "I know my worth," I said. "I spent my life being underestimated. I'm done with that." Innovix formally offered $270 million to acquire SupplySync as an independent subsidiary. I would stay CEO and keep full creative authority while they supply the infrastructure to expand worldwide. I couldn't turn that down. I negotiated it up to $310 million. After taxes, fees, and employee bonuses, I personally took home $160 million. I kept $25 million liquid and invested the rest in a diversified portfolio through my financial advisor. At 28, I had more money than I could reasonably spend in 3 lifetimes, and my family knew none of it. Meanwhile, Sophie was engaged again, this time to Chase, a hedge fund manager. My father suggested I apply for a job at his insurance company because they needed someone good with computers. My mother occasionally asked if I was still doing programming, like it was a hobby I would eventually drop. They were thrilled about Sophie's engagement, so I flew in for the party, brought a $300 registry gift card, and left before the speeches. Sophie didn't notice until the next morning. The acquisition finalized in October, and by November, I had settled into my new role, signed a 5-year contract with Innovix, and began planning how to manage my new level of wealth. I made an anonymous donation to my old public school, funding a full renovation of the technology lab and creating scholarship programs. I also bought my first real luxury purchase, a beautiful house in Brooklyn with a view of the Charles River. But I didn't post about it or mention it to anyone outside my close friends. As Thanksgiving approached, I found myself wanting to go home for the first time in years. Not because I felt warmer toward my family, but because I finally understood something. Their opinions no longer had power over me. I had spent so long chasing their approval, their acknowledgement, their pride, but I didn't need any of that anymore. I had already validated myself. I called my mother to confirm I'd be coming, and she sounded surprised. "Oh, wonderful! Honey, Sophie and Chase will be here too. Chase's parents might stop by. It'll be a perfect family reunion." A short pause. You're still doing that computer work, right? Are you earning enough to manage? Your father knows someone who might be hiring. I smiled at the phone. I'm fine, Mom. Really? Good. See you Thursday. I packed a small suitcase, including one important item, my acquisition paperwork. I wasn't bringing it for a grand reveal. I wasn't even sure I'd say anything. I just wanted it nearby as a reminder of what I'd built on my own. The drive to Connecticut felt different this time. Usually, I'd spend the entire trip bracing myself to feel ignored or dismissed. This time, I listened to music and enjoyed the fall scenery. And there was something new, a calm I'd never experienced before. I kept thinking about my session with Dr. Chen the week before. I'd been seeing her for 2 years, finally ready to work through the impact of growing up feeling unseen. "Why do you want to go to Thanksgiving?" she asked. "What are you hoping to get from it?" I'd been thinking about that question ever since. "I think I want to see if I still care," I finally said. "If their opinion still affects me, then I know I'm not done healing. But if it doesn't," I smiled, "then I'll know I'm free." Dr. Chen nodded. "Remember, Lily, freedom doesn't depend on their approval. You don't need to prove anything to them." "I know," I said, and I did mean it. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, the truth settled into me. I wasn't there to prove anything. I was there to see who I'd become in spite of everything. Maybe even to say goodbye to the version of me who spent years trying to earn their affection. The house looked exactly the same. Perfect lawn, expensive cars in the driveway. Sophie's BMW had been upgraded to a Mercedes 2 years earlier. The familiar chandelier glowed through the front window. Mom opened the door and hugged me instantly. "You made it! Come in! Come in! Sophie and Chase are in the living room." Sophie looked up briefly from the couch, scrolling through her phone. Chase sat beside her, looking like every hedge fund manager I'd ever encountered. An expensive suit on a casual Wednesday, perfectly styled hair, and a watch worth more than most cars. Sophie had always been stunning, tall, blonde, effortlessly elegant. "Hey, Em," she murmured, eyes already back on her phone. "Long time." "Hey," I said, setting down my luggage. "How's the wedding planning?" "Oh my gosh, it's insane. We're booking for next June, and all the good venues are already taken. Mom's helping. Thank God. Chase's mom, too. It's basically a full-time job." Dad walked in from his office, reading glasses still on. "Good to see you, Lily. How's the job?" "It's good, really good." "You still doing computer stuff?" "Yes, Dad, still computers." He nodded, already distracted. "Well, at least it's stable. I hope you get good benefits." Sophie scoffed. "Dad, she's a programmer, not a doctor. The benefits are probably basic." I could have corrected her. I could have mentioned Innovix Technologies' full health coverage, unlimited PTO, stock options, and my personal financial advisor. Instead, I just said they were fine. My salary alone was $700,000 a year, not including bonuses. Thanksgiving Day came with the usual chaos. Mom had been cooking since sunrise, turning down offers of help while complaining about how much work it was. Sophie directed Chase around like an employee, having him rearrange furniture and set up the dining room. I helped quietly, chopping vegetables and staying out of the way. Aunt Laura arrived with Uncle Dan and their kids around noon. Laura was Mom's older sister and just as fixated on status and appearances. Ryan and Ava, now teenagers, had the kind of entitlement that comes from never being told no. "Lily," Laura said, kissing both my cheeks. "Still single, I see." "Don't worry, sweetie. The right man will show up. Just put yourself out there more. Maybe try one of those apps. I'm not really looking right now, Aunt Laura. Oh, nonsense. Everyone's looking. You don't want to end up alone, do you? She turned to Sophie. Now tell me everything about the wedding. I slipped back into the kitchen. Dinner was ready at 3 p.m. We gathered around the long table. Mom and Dad at the ends, Sophie and Chase with Laura's family on one side, and me wedged between Ryan and Uncle Dan on the other. Dad said grace and passed the dishes. As always, the conversation immediately centered on Sophie. There was turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and canned cranberry sauce no one touched. So, Chase, Dad began, Sophie says you were just promoted. Chase gave a modest smile. Yes, sir. Managing Director. It's a big step. That's excellent. You two are really building a life. I'm proud. Thank you, Mr. Reed. We're excited for the future. Sophie squeezed his hand. We're looking at homes in Westchester. At least 5 bedrooms and a strong school district. We want to start a family in a few years. Mom glowed. Sophie, that's wonderful. You'll be a great mother. I felt something shift in me. There was no jealousy or sadness, just a quiet observation. I studied my mother's face as she looked at Sophie with pure admiration. I tried to remember if she had ever looked at me that way, but nothing came to mind. Dad beamed at Chase like he had personally chosen him from a lineup of ideal sons-in-law. You're a smart young man, Dad said. Sophie is lucky to have you. Chase smiled, a hint of pride in his expression. He clearly knew how valuable he was to them. The perfect match for their perfect daughter. As the table buzzed around me, I thought about my own dating life, which had been minimal lately. I dated, even seriously at times, but never brought anyone home. Why give them someone else to measure against Sophie and Chase? Why invite that judgment? Keeping that part of my life private felt safer. Laura leaned forward. What's your home budget? We're looking at the 1.5 to 2.5 million range, Chase said casually. People murmured approvingly. Ryan asked if they'd have a pool. Ava asked if she could visit. I ate my turkey quietly. And the wedding? Laura continued. Do you have a budget in mind? Sophie laughed. We want something special. We're thinking around $250,000. Dad's helping and Chase's parents are pitching in too. $250,000 for one day. I thought about how many scholarships that could fund. I kept the thought to myself. You deserve it, Laura said. It's your big day. Sophie's wedding, Sophie's future home, Sophie's job, Chase's promotion. They're promising life together. I felt like background decor. Uncle Dan eventually turned to me. So, Lily, how's work going? The table went quiet, everyone looking at me like I was about to give a weather update. It's going well, I said. Still doing programming? Dad asked. Yeah. That's nice, honey, Mom said in a tone that really meant, let's get back to talking about Sophie. Sophie actually laughed. Lily was being modest. I was sure she was doing fine with her small apps or whatever they were. Little tools. My software processed millions of transactions daily across 4 continents. But sure, little apps. I heard myself add, almost casually, I've had a few changes at work recently. Oh? Mom said, sitting up a bit. Did you get a promotion? That's lovely, dear. Something like that. Sophie already looked bored and reached for her wine. While Chase was checking his phone under the table, I sold my company, I said quietly. The words hung there for a moment. Everyone was still absorbing what I had said, not fully understanding it. What company? Dad's forehead creased. I thought you worked for someone else. No, I've owned my own firm for 7 years. SupplySync. It's a supply chain management software platform. I founded it and served as CEO. Sophie's hand froze halfway to her mouth. Wait, what? I started it in college, built it from scratch. Last month, we were operating in 8 countries. I sold it to Innovix Technologies. The silence grew heavy, and Laura's fork hit her plate. I took a sip of water, letting the pause settle. The sale was for $280 million. After taxes and fees, I kept $160 million. I'm sorry, did you say millions? Sophie choked. That's not possible. You're a coder. You live in a small apartment and drive a Honda. I still have my Honda, I said, but I bought a Lexus too, and the apartment isn't tiny. It's just minimal. I also purchased a house in Brooklyn. Chase stared at me like I'd grown another head. Brooklyn? Houses there start at… Mine was $4 million, I said calmly. Waterfront, 5 bedrooms, 3-car garage. I paid in cash. Sophie looked drained of color. This is a joke. It has to be. It's not. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and showed them the balance in just my checking account. $25,500,000 kept liquid. The rest was invested. Laura shrieked, startling everyone. Oh my God, that's real. That's an actual number. Mom grabbed the phone from my hand and stared at it as if it might snap at her. Her mouth opened and closed wordlessly. How are you, Lily? When did all this happen? I've been building SupplySync since I was 21. 7 years. I've had major clients for 5. I just never talked about it because no one asked. I looked directly at Sophie. You said I was doing okay with my little apps. You weren't wrong. I was doing more than okay. Dad had gone completely pale. But why didn't you tell us? We're your family. Because you never wanted to know. My voice stayed steady. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you shifted the focus to Sophie. Anything I achieved was overlooked. Whenever I came home, I felt invisible. So I stopped trying to be seen. I built something meaningful without your approval, support, or attention. Sophie slapped her fingers on the table. You made us think you were struggling. I felt bad for you. Did you really? I asked with a small, humorless laugh. You never actually thought about me at all. We would have helped you if you needed it, she said. I never needed it. That's the point. I kept my tone even. While you were given everything, private school, cars, vacations, Yale, I was building something real. I worked 80-hour weeks. I taught myself everything. I earned every dollar. Chase was typing rapidly, glancing between his phone and me. His eyes widened. She's telling the truth. Lily Reed, founder of SupplySync. The sale made headlines. Forbes called her one of the most successful female tech entrepreneurs under 30. Laura grabbed his phone and skimmed. There are photos. Lily at conferences. Lily with, is that the governor? Mom was crying now, mascara streaking down her face. Lily, sweetheart, why would you hide this from us? We're your family. We love you. Do you? The question came out sharper than I meant. Did you love me when you forgot my birthday 3 years straight? Did you love me when you spent $200,000 on Sophie's education but gave me nothing? Did you love me that Christmas I came home and you didn't put up a stocking for me because you forgot I was coming? That's not fair, Dad said softly. Isn't it? Tell me one thing about my life. Name one aspect of my life unrelated to my work. Name my closest friend. Name my favorite meal. Name anything that shows you've paid attention to me over the past decade. Silence. Sophie's face flushed, tears tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're hurting me on purpose," she accused. "You waited until it was my moment, and then you stole it." I laughed quietly. "Sophie, every moment has been yours. You've been the focus of every holiday, meal, and family event for the last 28 years. This wasn't planned. I'm tired of being invisible." "You're jealous," Sophie screamed. "I'm not jealous of you, Sophie. I'm sorry for you." Her mouth fell open. "Everything you've had was given to you. Your education, career opportunities, even your job. Dad called in favors to help you get interviews. You've never had to fight for anything, prove yourself, or question your ability to succeed. Now you're marrying a man with a good income, planning a life that's comfortable and expected. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's nothing remarkable. It's exactly what everyone expected you to have, because that's all you've ever learned to accept." Sophie lunged across the table. Chase held her back as she shouted. Laura fanned herself dramatically. Mom wept into her napkin. Ryan and Ava watched silently. Dad finally found his voice. "Lily, I think you should leave." "Yeah," I said, exhausted. "I think so too." I gathered my coat and luggage. As I approached the door, I glanced back. Sophie seethed. Mom and Dad looked stunned, possibly embarrassed. Laura's envy was obvious. I murmured gently, "I didn't come here to ruin anything. I came because I realized I don't need your approval. I see myself. I know my worth. It's not about money. It's about the life I've built on my own." I walked out, hearing Sophie wail, Laura's excitement rise, and Mom begging Dad to intervene. I got in my Lexus and drove away. Before I even hit the highway, my phone started blowing up. Sophie was calling and leaving frantic voicemails. Mom was crying, asking me to come back and talk. Dad was sending stern messages about family loyalty. Aunt Laura called, probably hoping I'd invest in one of her schemes. I blocked them all. 3 days later, I received an email from Sophie. It was long, rambling, full of accusations. But one sentence caught my eye. Mom said, "You bought that house with Dad's money. You must have stolen it from the family business somehow." I laughed aloud in my new living room, looking over the Charles River. They still couldn't believe that the invisible daughter, the overlooked afterthought child, had achieved more than they ever imagined. I didn't reply. A week later, my lawyer called. Their attorney demanded $5 million as recompense for their investment in my upbringing. I told my lawyer to refuse and to warn them that if they contacted me again, I would file a countersuit for mental anguish and child neglect. I had saved every transaction, bank statement, and record proving how much they had invested in Sophie versus me. They never contacted me again. Christmas came and went. I spent it in Aspen with friends I'd made in the tech world. People who valued me for what I built, not for being someone's forgotten daughter. We skied, drank fine wine, and celebrated our shared success. My phone stayed silent. In January, a message came from an unknown number. It was my cousin, Ryan. "Hello, Lily. I know things are weird with the family, but I wanted to say what you did was amazing. You inspired me. I'm going to work hard and create something of my own. Thank you for showing it's possible." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "Thank you, Ryan. If you ever need guidance or just someone to talk to, I'm here. Build something you're proud of. Perhaps some good came from that Thanksgiving fiasco after all." Sophie married in June. I wasn't invited, but I saw photos online. Her wedding was perfect, exactly like her fantasy. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. 6 months ago, I founded a new AI-driven logistics company, bringing in top employees from SupplySync. We already have interest from major players. This time, I'm not building in silence. I speak at panels, mentor young women in tech, and share my experience. Last month, I spoke at a tech conference at Yale. I almost declined, remembering Sophie walking those halls and how proud my parents had been of her. I said yes. After my talk, a young woman approached me, clutching a notebook, looking nervous. My presentation was about building success from nothing, being underestimated, and turning invisibility into an advantage. The audience hung on every word. "Hi, Miss Reed. I'm a first-generation college student. I'm here on scholarship, and my family has no idea what I'm doing. They think I should have stayed home, gotten married, and led a simpler life. Your story made me feel less alone." I held her hand. "You are not alone. You'll accomplish amazing things. Don't let anyone make you feel invisible." She walked away in happy tears. I realized then, this was better than revenge. This was purpose. My family still reaches out occasionally. Mom sends birthday cards. Dad emails tech articles, as if he's always cared. Sophie informed me she's pregnant. I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, but because my life doesn't include them. I have friends who celebrate my victories, colleagues who respect my expertise. A future I'm excited about. Full of possibilities I've created. I have peace. Sometimes people ask if I regret Thanksgiving, if I wish I'd handled it differently. I don't know. Maybe I could have been more tactful, less dramatic. Maybe I should have told them years ago, or never at all. But I remember the 9-year-old girl who watched her sister get a BMW, believing she wasn't worth investing in. I remember every dismissive comment, every forgotten moment, every time I was just Finn, and I think about the woman I became because of all that. No, I don't regret it. I earned my invisibility, and then my visibility. I did it my way, on my terms. Money and success are gratifying, but the best part is finally seeing myself clearly. That is worth more than $25 million, more than any validation my family could offer. I am no longer invisible. I am visible to the people who matter, including myself. At Thanksgiving, after revealing the $25 million acquisition, after Sophie's tantrum and Laura's scream, after all the turmoil, Dad sat silently, staring at his plate. He didn't defend me, apologize, or justify the inequality. He didn't congratulate me or express pride. He just sat, fork in hand, realizing too late that he had bet on the wrong daughter and lost everything that mattered. That stillness said more than any words ever could.